Recently, someone sent me an email and they were excited. They had finally made it into the fives club. Their A1C was now below 6. Here's part of what this lady reported. I got my lab report 5.9. I'm in the fives. So, do I go to a complete 5, 5.0? Hope I can do it. Well, that brings up an important question. How low should we go? Several weeks ago, I posted a video about the ideal A1C and discussed what some health professionals suggest on this topic. My basic take on this was that every diabetic should be able to achieve an A1C in the 5s, but just how low into the 5s you bring your A1C is a personal goal that you must decide for yourself. The idea of making a decision about how low to bring your A1C, well, that would just sound crazy, like crazy talk to many diabetics and even nutritionists and some doctors. Their thought is that diabetes is a raging monster that you could not possibly control. You have no power over it at all, except that with the proper meds, you might be able to slow it down a bit. Dr. Richard Bernstein, a type 1 diabetic, totally disagrees with this. When he first began adopting a low-carb diet, and he started carefully adjusting his insulin dosages to match his low-carb meals, he came to realize an amazing truth. In describing this revelation, he wrote, I had the new sensation of being the boss of my own metabolic state. I had taught myself how to make my blood sugar levels whatever I wanted them to be, and was no longer on the roller coaster. Things were under my control. Wow, that quotation ought to be etched above the doorway of every endocrinologist's office. I could make my blood sugar levels whatever I wanted them to be. Now, if that was true for a type 1 diabetic, and at the time he wasn't even a doctor when he discovered it, how much truer should it be for a type 2 diabetic who has access to so much more knowledge and information today than Dr. Bernstein did those 50 years ago? If it is true that we have far more power over how low or high we allow our glucose levels and our A1C scores to be, then exactly how low should we drive them? Before we get to this issue, we need to discuss a nasty little word called sacrifice. Sacrifice essentially means doing without, and there's no defeating diabetes, there's no glucose control, if you're not willing to embrace the concept of sacrifice. The truth is this, you're going to have to cut out of your diet some of the comfort foods that you've been eating since childhood, and you're going to have to change your lifestyle in order to stop the progression of diabetes in your life and start sending your blood sugar levels in the other direction. If you naively think you can just go on the same way that you've been going for decades and diabetes will magically reverse itself, you are living in a fantasy world. Most people arrive in the land of diabetes by doing these things: eating whatever they like, eating as much as they like, and eating as often as they like. This is the dreadful standard American diet, and sadly it has become the standard diet for much of the world. And if you're unwilling to change all of that, all I can say is good luck. You are headed for misery, diabetic complications, and likely a premature end of your life. Some people whine and whine about the idea of making any dietary sacrifices. If I can't eat the way I've always eaten, I might as well be dead. I just can't do that. Well, I think that's ridiculous. Your life consists of a whole lot more than what food you pile on your plate during your meals. And the truth is, there are some very tasty substitutes for the foods that you're going to have to give up. As you do away with things like bread, rice, pasta, breakfast cereal, oatmeal, and potatoes, you can enjoy all kinds of other foods, some of which taste as good or better than what you used to eat. But they raise your blood sugar only a tiny fraction of what those high-starch foods did. Now, what we're talking about is a concept from the Bible which is called self-control. and it is listed as one of the fruits of the Holy Spirit. The reality is this: we human beings are required to exercise self-control, not just in our diet, but in every area of our lives. Our Creator calls us to live lives of self-control, sexually, in our speech, in the way we treat people, and in all kinds of other ways. We cannot do everything we feel like doing. Our nature is too corrupt. Our impulses are too much tainted with selfishness for us to say and do whatever feels good to us at the moment. And this is very much true in what we eat and how we eat. Amazingly, when people begin to exercise self-control and strictly limit their carbohydrates and narrow their window of eating and cease from grazing on snacks all day long, lo and behold, their glucose levels begin to retreat. And they usually find that within 6 months or so, their doctors report that their A1c has taken a nosedive, and they ask that wonderful question, one that every person should be able to hear from their doctor: what in the world have you been doing? But to get back to our initial point, how far should we take this? At what point do we say, I'm low enough? I don't need to make any more sacrifices. I don't need to exercise any more than what I'm doing. I'm content to keep on doing just like I'm doing and live out my years. That's an important question, and in order to give you some food for thought as you contemplate and answer the question for yourself, I want to talk for a few minutes about something that has been called the law of diminishing returns. One definition of this law is this: a principle stating that profits or benefits gained from something will represent a proportionately smaller gain as more money or energy is invested in it. In other words, when you reach a certain level of quality or success, throwing more money or throwing more energy and sacrifice at it is wasteful. You're not going to get much more of a return on the extra effort or money. Let me give you an example of this. Today I'm using a microphone that costs around $20. It's this one. It's called a Behringer XM 8500, for those of you who know much about mics and audio. And it works perfectly fine. I used it for the first several years I did this channel. I doubt that many of you said to yourselves when this video began, what horrible audio quality. I wish Dennis would use a more expensive mic. Now, here is a popular mic that is used all the time by podcasters and vloggers. It's called a Shure SM7B, and it costs around $400. Now, if it's true that you get exactly what you pay for, this mic should produce 20 times better audio than the one that I'm using today. But of course, that mic would not produce 20 times better audio. It probably would improve the audio a little bit, but not 20 times as much. So if I pay an extra $380 and get the more expensive mic, am I going to get 20 times more compliments on my audio quality? I don't think so. Come to think of it, I can never remember a single comment or an email from someone who watched Beat Diabetes and told me, well, your talk about diabetes really helped me and my blood sugar is so much better now, but it would have been so much better still had you used a more expensive microphone. Now, there is a level where audio quality does make a difference. If I recorded every video this way, using my camera's onboard microphone and not having a mic like this one close to my mouth, you would notice that. Many of you would complain, and some of you would refuse to watch my videos. So spending $20 for a mic that will significantly improve the audio quality is money well spent. But spending $400 for a mic that would slightly improve the audio is not really much of a bargain. And then there's this baby. This is a Neumann U87. This microphone costs over $3,000. And that suggests that if I used this microphone, my sound quality should be 150 times better than with this $20 mic. But of course, that would not be the case. If I went out today and bought this $3,000 plus mic and started using it on Beat Diabetes, very few of you would notice or care about the improved audio quality. Your focus would be, and it should be, on the content of my videos, not the cost of my microphone. Again, you would notice this kind of lousy audio, but you would hardly notice or care about a $3,000 microphone versus a $20 microphone. All right, you say, what does this have to do with diabetes? You are going to have to pay for lower A1c scores and lower blood sugar tests. And the price you pay will be sacrificing certain foods that you love and that are convenient to eat. There is a price to pay for beating diabetes, but it's not a money price. It's the price of making some sacrifices and exercising some self-control. There's no doubt about that. But how much of a price do you need to pay? I can say for myself, I'm willing to pay the price for keeping my glucose well below diabetic levels, more than willing. But I'm not eager to pay a price much higher than I need to pay. If a $20 Behringer mic will get the job done, well, I'm not about to go out and buy a $3,000 mic. Getting back to Dr. Bernstein's thought, when he said I can make my blood sugar levels whatever I want them to be, he was essentially talking about how many carbs he ate every day. And he decided for himself that around 30 grams of carbs each day was perfect for him. Now, that decision is a personal one, and no one has the right to dictate that for you. My feeling is that I do not want to live with diabetic numbers, which would be an A1c of 6.5 or higher. In fact, I don't want to live with pre-diabetic numbers, which would represent an A1c of between 5.7 to 6.4. These days, I'm going along with an A1c of right around 5.0 or so, and I'm achieving this without any diabetic meds or insulin. Now, I feel pretty confident that if I pushed harder, I could probably get lower. If I started eating one meal a day and made some more sacrifices, I could probably get into the mid-4s. But at least for right now, I'm content where I am. Maybe sometime I will change my mind, but for now, I'm content. Sometimes I think a few folks, not many, but a few, get a little too radical in their desire to get as low as possible. They just give up almost everything. They won't touch salads. They never have keto desserts. They'll never go to a restaurant. They'll never drink a diet soda. They refuse to ever use a microwave. They despise low-carb bars. They think eating any form of dairy is evil, and so forth. And if that's your attitude, I won't argue with you, but that's not where I am. To me, there's a law of diminishing returns that goes into effect once you get to a certain level. You're going to end up paying a high price for a very small return, maybe none at all. I look at it like this. Every time I go out in my car, I take a risk that I'll die in a car accident. If I was determined to totally eliminate that possibility, I could work from home, shop online, and have my food and everything else brought to my door and never go out in a car again. And that would absolutely ensure that I would never die in a car accident. But what a price I would pay for never seeing the world outside the walls of my house. I'm willing to take a reasonable chance, so I do. I go out to my car, get in it, and go places. But I'm not stupid. I know that if I drive too fast, I've just increased the odds of an accident. If I drive drunk, if I drive with a blindfold on, if I text while I drive, I've increased the chances of serious injury or worse by my foolishness. So I don't do those things. So I do what I can to minimize my risks while driving, but I will not stop driving altogether to bring my risk down to zero. I think diabetes works the same way. I'm not about to do stupid things like munching on chips all day long or eating donuts or downing huge mounds of rice just to satisfy my taste buds and drive my glucose into diabetic levels. As long as I can keep my glucose spikes in line and my A1c at a good level, well, I may never hit Dr. Bernstein's standard of an A1c of 4.5, but I'm satisfied. I know that by keeping my blood sugar well under diabetic levels, I've done myself a tremendous favor. As for you, well, just read, research, think, pray, and make your own decision. Probably most of you know my wife Benedicta, but few of you know the amazing paths God has led her to bring her to where she is today. Benedicta was orphaned at an early age and lived with an elderly stepmother growing to adolescence. They were so poor, Benedicta had to drop out of school and sell food door to door for them to survive. As a teen, Benedicta got a job as a housemaid, which developed into a nightmare. She was required to cook, clean, wash, take care of the children, and she had to get up at 4 a.m. every day just to get her work started. Worse than that, she was frequently beaten. At around 20, she moved to the huge city of Lagos, where she started her own little business. Sometimes she prospered, but at other times she nearly starved and went days at a time without eating. At one point, she became so sick she passed out in her room and nearly died. She found herself outside of her body, and she was able to see the splendors of heaven until she was sent back with a command to share her story. One day, however, her life changed when an American evangelist came to her community to preach, and of course, that was me. The rest, as they say, is history. Benedicta has shared her life story in a recently published autobiography, and you can get it on Amazon as either an ebook or a paperback. A link to this book on Amazon is in the description.